Hello and welcome back to New Paradigm Healing. This series focuses on ayahuasca-assisted therapy. Our intention is to educate, inform, and support the conscious and responsible use of ayahuasca in the Western context. If you want to know more about ayahuasca-assisted therapy and our upcoming trainings and workshops, sign up for our mailing list to be the first one to know about the latest news at avatarhealingarts.com. Hello and welcome back to our podcast, Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy. And I'm here with my good friend and sister, Bonnie Divina Maa. And it's not the first time we have you on, sister. So thank you and welcome back.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
And we're going to continue with our exploration in this special segment in our podcast, The Dark Side of Plant Medicine. And the last episode, if you haven't listened to it, then check it out. We are talking about the misuse of sexual power or like sexual abuse in the therapeutic spaces, especially with plant medicine. And we started that last week because, most of the crossing of professional boundaries in therapeutic spaces is the overwhelming cases are sexual abuse. So that would be the most common. And definitely, I'm sure that even today, we're going to touch on that because it's just so prevalent, not just in the plant medicine spaces, but, just in general, in the world, unfortunately, and in every area, we can run into these things. If people are familiar, the last few years, there was so much more awareness raised with the Me Too movement, and it's so much more in the mainstream. So we just, joining that, riding that wave of raising more awareness in specifically, in plant medicine spaces and ceremonies and therapy that is connected with working with different intelligence. So, but today we're going to focus more on the misuse of power and the misuse of money. So, what I want to start with is that this is, the misuse of sexual energy, the misuse of money, misuse of power relates to the first three chakras. So if you are familiar with the chakra system and the first three centers, they are kind of lower centers, so to say, that, connect to these energies. And, I think that in terms of healing and spiritual evolution, that's a part of our evolution to raise our energy, and to transcend, those lower centers and integrate them into our kind of higher aspects. And I think that anybody who is on the healing path, goes through these stages, and I'm certainly going through still, just working, the imbalances, in those areas that I'm aware of. So I think it's not surprising that it is just such a big topic, in the plant medicine space. Just in general, because that's, really big part of healing and evolution, working through these areas and having more awareness and bringing more love and light, to these aspects of ourselves, so we can embody and express that higher self and that higher aspect and that, spiritual being that we truly are. So it's important, that we can also talk about these things and share information. So our intention is really to, help you guys who you are listening, and then just to really educate ourselves and educate other people so we can be more safe and we can receive, more healing instead of being re-traumatized, and causing more pain, because of these imbalances. So what I would like to start with today is that predators exist and how to recognize them. And I think, probably we mentioned the last time that when we come into plant medicine spaces, especially, with indigenous people, a lot of people from the West have this idea that these people are perfect, they kind of superior beings. They don't have any stuff, to work on. They already healed everything. They are enlightened. They know everything. And we are putting them onto a pedestal. And I certainly, was one of those people when I came into these places, many years ago. I did think, that they are superior and they know better. And I didn't dare, to question them or to question anything, in regards to them, because I really had this filter. So I think it's a good starting point for us. And I think, Bonnie, you had a good phrase for this, what you call it, the shaman spell, So can you talk about a little bit, what does it mean and how do you see this shaman spell kind of manifesting and playing out in these places?
Okay, yeah. So the shaman spell is something that I think it's very easy for many of us to fall under when we first start down this road. And what I mean by that is essentially what you're describing, that all of a sudden we are seeing these people as supernatural. Um, and we begin to think that yes, they're perfect. We desire to be with them, to be like them, and we don't see any of their their selves outside of perhaps the ceremony space, right? And so just like one can cast a spell, we fall under this spell, and we may often act and say and behave in certain ways that perhaps are even out of character for us. Perhaps even there's a part of us that might even have a red flag or know better, but we are so much under the spell that we don't give that any attention. We just continue um, to remain in this place where, like you said, we look up to them. We take every word that they say as the word, and then we can find ourselves in some pretty precarious situations. We know that not all shamans or people who are serving medicine are doing this intentionally. Some are. Some are very knowingly abusing their power, and others are fooling themselves into believing that they're actually doing good, and believe wholeheartedly that they're doing good and doing the right thing. Uh, and so when we take our own discernment out of the equation, when we begin to just blindly follow someone like we're under that spell, we can put ourselves in all sorts of situations. And we know that one of those situations is, of course, the most common one would be inappropriate sexual situations that can create a lot more trauma for ourselves. But there's also many other ways that we can be manipulated. And I think we're focusing a lot on money today. So we can speak more to that, and how being under the shaman spell um, might relate to that abuse of power and money. So I'll leave it at that. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, when we have this type of naivete, we almost kind of blinded to the reality. So as you said, we have our blinders on and we're only seeing, a little part of that person, especially if we are, going to another country to participate in a retreat or in a ceremony, and we are not living in that community. Because I think, when the healer or the person who you are working with is part of your community, you have more eyesight on their life in general, not just, in a ceremonial space. So I think that is a protection in itself. If you live in the community where these people operate, the community knows. I remember, for example, when I was a child, and, some of my friends would go to church and everybody knew that that priest, for example, is an alcoholic and a womanizer and all these kind of things. And, so people, didn't have, that illusion that, oh, this person is perfect, because, in a community, when you live there, you can't really hide your personality, but I think, when we are going into a different culture, into a different country, into a different environment, different community, and we only see this special part, especially when, altered state of consciousness is involved, then we are just really seeing a fragment of reality. So I think one of the most important thing is for us to remember that these people who are healers, shamans, ceremonial space holders, they are human beings just like us, and they have gifts and challenges just like us. I never met a person who is like completely enlightened and have nothing, no shit to deal with, so to say, excuse me, my friend. So I'm not saying there are no such people. I'm sure there are. I never met them. But I think in general, we can say that people who are way showers and teachers and space holders, on the healing journey, they are people who are maybe in some aspects a little bit more ahead on the same path, in some areas, but can be other areas that actually they are more behind, so it is just, I think the first thing that I want to really emphasize is to remember that these people are human beings and they have gifts and challenges. They have a dark side and the light side, just as we all do. So to take that blinder off and to expand our awareness and to stay aware that we are, interacting not with a supernatural being, but with another human being. And they are not perfect, as we are not perfect either. So I think, as you said, one of the most important is like discernment. And when we are blindly following somebody, we are disconnecting from our intuitive guidance and from our gut feelings and heart guidance. And we are kind of like brushing those things off. So once we take those blinders off and we stay grounded in our body and connected to our intuition, then we can hear that voice that is maybe has questions, or maybe is like, why is this happening? Or this is weird, or I don't feel comfortable with that. And then we can stay more in tune with that and act upon that awareness that we all have, but we might be very disconnected from when we have this devotion, and this like image of somebody being, perfect or superior or supernatural. So I would like to give people a couple of like examples, how can this look like when somebody is in this space. So I think, I would say that the first thing is to look into the continuous development of that person, and how do they do their own healing work, and who are their teachers, who they go for advice, and what are the things, that they are dealing with. So I think definitely one of the red flags would be if somebody believes that they have nothing to work on, that they already healed, they already perfect, they did their path, they were in the training before, and now they are perfect, and they don't have to deal with anything, and they don't have any challenges, and they know better everything than anybody else. And just having this kind of inflated ego or spiritual ego that is saying, hey, I don't need any more evolution because I'm evolved to the max. I think that's definitely would be like a red flag for me. And another thing would be to to imply to the clients that, hey, I am the superior being and I know better what is good for you, and you should do this or that or the other for your own good or for the highest good. Or maybe it can play out in a different way is, when the therapist saying to the client that you are special, you have this special ability, you have this, and it's like almost favoring that person, and making them believe, that they are somebody special or gifted in some special way, and treated, in this way by a therapist, is also, I think, can be part of it, or it can manifest even, with gaslighting. So if somebody, like a participant, has questions or has intuition or gut feeling, and they dare to ask some questions, and then they are gaslighted, or they are told that what they feel is not valid, their questions are ridiculous and can't be answered, or how they dare question anything, that the teacher is saying, just invalidating people's feelings, experiences, and questions. That would be some of the things that I could point out that would be for me, a red flag in terms of, okay, like, I'm not sure I'm resonating with this person, or I want to receive, healing, through this channel. So what do you think about that? Do you have, anything else to add to kind of this category, or some examples that you experienced or you've seen, in these places where how it plays out?
Well, you've hit a lot of the highlights for sure. All super valid and very realistic red flags that we see all of the time. And so I'm in complete agreement with you. I would say that, first of all, just going back a little bit, I do know some pretty enlightened beings. Having traveled in India and different places in the world, um, I've known some people who have been doing their work for this life and many many lives, and they're pretty enlightened, and I would say that a lot of those people, they don't have anything, right? Like, I'm thinking a lot about, like, the sadhus, the yogis in India. They don't own a thing, right? And they're not asking you for anything either. And so, enlightenment, of course, comes in all forms, and we do have those people who are really legitimately doing their work. So it's not to say that everyone has this horrible dark side or something like that, and or there are plenty of people who are 100% really walking in integrity with their path, and are very much in awareness of when they stumble, of when they fall out of alignment, and they do go seek help, and they are transparent with it. And so these are the people, of course, that we want to be able to look to set the example, because it's those who, like you said, are in complete denial and say, I'm totally healed, I've got nothing else to do, everybody look at me and listen to me, I'm the one who knows best, and you should do this and this, and if you question me or anything like that, there's something wrong with you. And so, and of course, that's not an enlightened person, right? And that's clearly somebody who is, their spiritual ego has taken over, and perhaps is making, and they really believe these things too, right? They can really really believe them, um and really really also think that they are saving the world and doing good things for the world.
Mhm.
uh so a couple of ways that I've seen this play out, just in some some real life scenarios, as far as like abuse of, like, when we're speaking about money. um One would be someone who tells you all you have to do is come to more ceremony. Just keep coming. Just keep coming. Keep coming to ceremony. More ceremony. More ceremony. Right? And they never speak to tools or ways that we integrate between ceremonies. They're only talking about ceremony. it can be really dangerous, and we can fall into a big trap when we, as someone who is, say, serving medicine or has a healing center, when we make it starts to become all about money, because we are reliant upon ceremony and people coming for the money, right? Where we need that money to keep everything going. And so it's I've seen this happen time and again, where I've seen people say over and over again, integration is ridiculous. It's not necessary. All you ever need is more ceremony. All you ever need is more medicine. Just keep coming back. That's a big red flag. That's a very, very common one. Another one I see is in relation to people who have a lot of money. Um, People can, shamans and other people can be really good at feeling this out and understanding, like, who's got the money. And when someone has a lot of money, uh, and they are looking for something to give it to, and perhaps they're feeling a little bit lost, uh, people will, will say, like, it can be, I've seen it in the yoga world, I've seen it everywhere. uh they'll be told things like, oh, you're so special, I'm going to elevate you to a very special position, right? I'm going to put you on a pedestal right here next to me. I'm going to put garlands on you and feathers, or you're going to be really, really special, right? And but you've just got to fund my project, you've got to fund my center, you've got to fund my ashram, whatever it may be. And so I see this one quite a bit, and I have seen people in power be really abusive and say really horrible things to certain people, and then to other people where, they've got the dollar signs all around them, it's a whole different story. And so for the people out there who, you know are blessed and have that kind of abundance, that's also a red flag. Anyone who's telling you these kinds of things, um you know it's not always that it's shady, but it certainly can be. And and the fact that people sometimes with money get treated very differently from the people who don't have as much money,
Mm.
and they get special treatment and things like that. So those are two of the things that are coming to mind. Another thing might be uh, that more gaslighting approach of making you think like you're crazy, right? You need serious help. You better come, and you better, give me this much money, and I'm going to help you with this, but oh, then there's this, and it's going to take that much money, right? And so uh, people can take advantage of us, because we want so badly to heal that we will do anything, and we will believe anything, and we will go down to that ATM and we'll take out every last dollar we have because we were told this is how much it takes, right? Um so, and again, maybe there is a fair energy exchange there, right? Maybe that is going to be what you need, but it's certainly a red flag. So those are the three things that are coming to mind right now, because I've seen them play out over and over again.
Absolutely. And you just said, exactly the same things that were on my list. And that just also shows that these things occur, oftentimes, in these spaces, again, saying that, not every case is like that, so, and it can be a very mutual relationship. So like some things that I would like to add. So this is what we call like a dual relationship. So once a healer and the the client gets into like business together, for example, saying, hey, you're going to found my center now or build a palapa for the ceremonies, and in return you're going to be this, you know, special status person or something while you are in the therapy. So I would add that, you know, be wary of these dual relationships, you know, because it's very hard to keep boundaries when, you know, you don't know, okay, now we are business partners or we are like client and therapist or what is going on here. So, and as Bonnie said, you know, sometimes, you know, this can be very positive and consensual and thing, you know, that somebody wants to give back to the community where they received healing and wants to donate money or wants to help them, you know, to build something or to, you know, bring their world into a wider audience. But I would definitely say that it's much more clearer, the situation, if these are separated. So you finish your therapy, you finish your retreat, you have a certain amount of time passed, you know, maybe 3 to 6 months minimum, before you enter into a different kind of relationship as a donor or as a business partner. And then even in that case, it has to be a lot of clarity around it, or, okay, you know, what is this relationship about? What are the boundaries? What I'm giving, what I'm receiving, and to be clear on that before you enter into that relationship. And that's what we refer to as informed consent, you know, can reduce greatly the risk, you know, of what Bonnie was talking about. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, as you said, you know, these boundaries are sometimes, you know, crossed or kind of not clear. And some people do really prey on people who, you know, who have financial resources and pull them into, as Bonnie said, you know, promising them, you know, healing or certain status or certain special things, you know, in return of money. I think, you know, one of the good thing is that, again, informed consent. So you enter into a relationship and you are told up front, okay, this is how many sessions, this is how many ceremonies you will have, this is how much every little, you know, item will cost, this is how much the total will be, this is how long it's going to take. And you have an agreement, either verbal or better, a written agreement about that before you start your journey. You know, I think one of the kind of, again, red flags when people keep pulling people in. So you committed to one retreat and then they say, okay, you're better, but now I discovered that you have this other thing, so you will need this one as well, and that will cost this much money, and now you need this. And it's just like, you know, pulling a string or a carrot or something, and you know, just playing with the vulnerability of the people, and playing, you know, with that deepest desire for us to be whole, to be healed, you know, and pulling people along, you know, not being clear how long this is going to take and how much it's going to cost for me, but, you know, just bringing bit by bit in the people. And once you are invested, you know, psychologically as well, people don't want to quit, even though they might have, you know, intuition to the contrary or gut feelings to the contrary, or they might not feel, you know, 100% right, you know, with that relationship, but they are like, oh, I'm already invested, you know, this much time, this much money, so I'm not gonna quit. So I would add, you know, that this can come into this category that we were talking about. And you know, definitely, as Bonnie said, you know, just come to more ceremony, that's all you need. That is not true. That we said that 1,000 times on this podcast. You are the healer, and, you know, the plant allies are just powerful allies, you know, and teachers who can support us on our healing journey. But we need to, you know, do the necessary steps, you know, to change our life and to come back to that natural state of health and wellness. I wanted to say something, but I totally forgot. Anyways, we will just move on and it will come back to me. So couple of things that Bonnie mentioned before, that there's two categories, you know, so like a therapist or shaman or a healer can do these things that we are talking about, not intentionally, so to say, out of ignorance, and they can do it with intention, to get financial gain. And oh yeah, I know what I was. So not just, asking people for money or for funding, but also asking people for clients and referrals. I've seen many times that, shamans would say, hey, can you organize a group for me or circle where you live? Can you ask your friends, your relatives, to participate in ceremony? So not necessarily, having directly money from the person, but asking them to do advertisement or to do, organize retreats for them, or to work for them, as marketing, as an organizer person, so on and so forth, without any compensation, so because this can be also very clear and very beneficial and win-win situation when I say, no, I'm happy to advertise you or refer people to you because I was so happy with what I received. And, just as yourself and me, like I do give back. If somebody gives me a referral, I offer either free sessions or monetary compensation, or we do an affiliate program. So this is not a bad thing, but if it's not equal, if it's not hey, you do all this for me and you will not get anything in return, just my special attention and me telling you that, oh, you are some special person, So I wanted to add that. Okay, so people who are doing this intentionally, that's what we call black magic. Like that's what I call black magic, when you have an intention to take advantage of somebody or harm somebody. And unfortunately, I think it's easier to do that when you are in an altered state, you are not in an ordinary state of consciousness, when you are dealing with something possibly life-threatening. So a lot of gaslighting or manipulation going on with people who are actually, have maybe, a chronic disease that can lead to death, very easily. And then healers or therapists promising, the cure or in return for favors, for money, for, sexual exchange, so on and so forth. So that is something, that is definitely more harmful in a way that people are intentionally wanting to take advantage somebody who is in a vulnerable position, or harm somebody without, their informed consent. So that and that is, very prevalent, especially in South America. I think we touched upon this, last episode, how there are, these black magicians, so to say, or people who are using this type of black magic, and there is like jealousy in between the shamans, and there is like this spiritual, psychedelic warfare that is going on, and that is something that is very real. Although for people who come from the West, they might think, oh, that's only exists in the movies. Well, that's not my experience, like my experience that this is a real thing. This can harm people. This can make people sick. I also heard about situations when a shaman threatened, clients that if you don't do this or that, I'm gonna put a curse on you. I'm gonna put a curse on your family. I'm gonna, like prevent your healing, and so on and so forth. So again, just staying grounded and losing that naivete that these things are not existing or these things can't happen to me, because once we come from that perspective, we are blinded to these things, and we can much easier fall prey and for victim, unfortunately, to these manipulations. So I would say if you are going, traveling, especially South America, Central America, wanting to work with indigenous people, if it's possible, the best would be that you check, their reputation and their background in their community where they live. So if there is a way for you, to go into the community and ask people who live in the same community that, hey, how is this shaman, how is this, just the same as the example I brought earlier from my life, that people talk about stuff and they know what people do, and they know people who are not in integrity, and that it's not difficult to find out these kind of things. And I think that could be kind of one of our tools in our toolbox to check, their reputation and their background in the community where they live, or even if it's a retreat center, that will have a reputation in the community, and they say, hey, the community has this opinion about this center and what they are doing there. So it's good to listen to these kind of things to figure out, like how integral people are and places. And obviously, nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. Bonnie is not perfect probably either. So it's not that we are looking for some kind of perfect, like supernatural being, but we are looking for more like transparency. Transparency, such as, for example, if a client asked me about my personal journey or my personal challenges, I would disclose that, like I not necessarily something that I start with, because it's not, often it's not necessary, that the client has that information. But if they would ask me up front, face to face, I would totally disclose it. And I think that kind of transparency and that kind of humanity, when we are able to show our vulnerable side and we are able to speak about our challenges, in our journey, that doesn't mean that I'm not a good therapist or not a good healer or not a good support for other people. So again, I just want to emphasize that we are not looking for some perfect person. We are just looking for people who are transparent, who are ethical, who are integral, and who are real, and also who have good reputation based on, the work that they did. And another thing that occurred to me, that it's worth checking, how long they are on their healing path and how long they are supporting others in their healing journey. Because that's another thing, that happens a lot, that somebody did 5 ayahuasca ceremony and now they are holding ayahuasca circles. So if somebody would tell me that I'm an integration therapist and like how long have you worked with the medicine? Oh, my first ceremony was a year ago. I would not go to that person. Like it's just like simply, I'm like, okay, that's not enough time in my world, and to have enough experience and expertise in what you're doing, even if people are coming with the best intention to help. So these were some things that occurred to me. So I'm going to give it over to you, Bonnie, because I'm sure you have some good points to add.
Thank you. So going back a little bit, I actually have known this to happen where someone threatened to put a curse on another person. Um, and I have had people come back and say things like, I think that they tried to, do some black magic on me, or they tried to put a curse on me. Um, and actually, some of those things were revolved around money, uh, right? And so there was this whole thing that happened around money, and then the uh, person in power was threatening, right? Saying, well, don't mess with me. I'll put a curse on you. And so that's all obviously completely out of integrity. Now, and just to not to dwell on the details of that particular situation, but just to say, perhaps there is even someone who came and they weren't able to pay, or there was some sort of misunderstanding about money, or something happened in that arena. It's still never okay to say to that person, I'm going to put a curse on you, right? Or you're or I've heard even things like you're you're a shame to your people, right? And things like this. And anybody who is saying something like that obviously has some really dark stuff that they need to address in work with. And that is absolutely a complete abuse of power. uh, and then we're merging into this this conversation about um, when someone is ready, right? When someone is ready to take that role and to step more fully into that power. And that is a conversation that will probably continue for as long as we're around. uh, and there's a lot of differing opinions, right? And I'd say there's no hard and fast rule here on this. Certainly there are certain criteria, right? So I would say, even for someone who maybe has had 100 ceremonies, if they still haven't done their own self-healing, right? um if they don't understand how to work with energy, how to call in protections, uh if they are one of those people that says, oh, let's pack in a whole room, right? Let's pack in a whole room of people, let's see how many people we can fit into this ceremony, right? Those kinds of things, these are things that we have to start like thinking like, okay, well, this is probably not a person who should be standing up in front of the circle, pouring medicine and holding a healing space for others. uh, it may be that there is someone who has done tons of self work, who is super grounded, super aligned, super in integrity, has other ways of working with energy, perhaps, other shamanic background that didn't have to do with medicine, right? And maybe they don't need as long as someone else might. um we bring all we're coming from so many different places in the world and different paths these days. It's hard to say. I mean, right now we even have psychotherapists administering medicine to people, and they themselves have never done medicine,
Yeah, big
right?
red flag for me.
Never touched it, or they don't practice with it all the time. Yet they are giving it to others in a clinical setting. And there are people that can find some healing through that. I know for me personally, with all of the medicines that I work with and serve, uh, I have to stay in those medicines all the time, right? I have to be in a constant conversation with them. I have to make sure, even if I don't want to, don't feel like doing that combo that day, I've got to, right? Because it maintains my relationship with the spirit of that medicine, keeps me in the practice, keeps me in the conversation. And I would say that's another red flag, for sure, is somebody who's serving a lot of medicine, but they haven't taken the medicine themselves or sat in another ceremony in a long time. That one for sure is a big red flag for me. People are just serving, but not having their own practice with the medicine. And just to bring it back to this other topic which I brought in, which was, it's also related to money, is how many people can we pack into a ceremony space? I've been in plenty of those situations, and I have heard these conversations being had. And there is many times where the question of safety is never questioned. Nobody's ever just saying, hey guys, put the brakes on for a second here. Is it really safe to have 50 people come to the ceremony? And I get that question asked a lot. Well, how many is safe, right? And again, there's a lot to that question. um I have known some pretty impeccable, amazing medicine people who can hold a really big space. and they are, like Jedi Knights, right? They know how to control the grid, they know how to control the space, and every single person in that space is safe, and they're just that powerful, right? They've done that much work.
So how
uh
many are we speaking here when you say, okay, these people can hold a pretty big space? Like,
so the most that I've seen when I talk about something like that would maybe be like 30 or 35.
exactly.
Yeah.
I had just the same number. And, I've sit with many different spaces with different traditions. And I would say that, an ideal space would be maybe between 10 to 15 people, to oversee if there is one shaman or one facilitator. And then somebody who is a master of masters could hold maybe a twice as big place, up to 30. Now, with different type of spaces, for example, the Santo Daime, where they have 100 or more people present. Now, that is a different kind of space, and there is not
Yes.
one space holder, there is a circle of people who hold the space, and there is many facilitators. And again, if you break it down in the spaces that I've sit in, there is as many facilitate. If there is a circle of 120 people, that there is at least 15 facilitators who are going around and checking on everybody, plus the circle of musicians, who are the main
Yes.
space holders. So for that circle, there is like close to 30 people, holding
Yes.
that space.
And the
So,
daime tradition is a different tradition too, and a lot of people coming to that church and doing that work have been coming for a long time.
right.
They are,
Community
very
aspect.
familiar with
Yeah,
this medicine. They know how to navigate their own space with the medicine. They know how to hold their own space. And that is also something that has to be taken into consideration, right?
yeah,
We have, I've been invited to ceremonies before where it's, quote, like pros only, right? Not to say that people who haven't, been doing this work a long time can't just have some sort of crazy experience. Uh, but the power of when people come together in a space who really know how to sit with this medicine, that carries over into the space, and so it's a more safe space versus 30 people or 100 people and it's their first, second, or 10th time, right? And this is what happens at some of these centers that are very popular and
yes.
like
We
household
don't want to
words.
name names here, but
So we know who they are,
yeah,
and I've had friends and teachers work at some of those centers and come away saying like, this is not safe,
yeah,
right? This is absolutely not safe. And there's, 120 people, and they're all scattered into different rooms, and most of them are super
absolutely.
new to
There is
medicine
one
work.
facilitator for that many people, or one shaman, it's like really unheard of, like in the indigenous, traditions.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Now,
thank
somebody like, something like, say, let's the Yawanawa or the Hunikuan get together, right? Now, these are villages, these are groups of people who have grown up in this tradition. It's a
right.
family tradition. They get together every weekend. They drink ayahuasca, they play music, they sing, and it's all about community. And that's a whole different kind of
Yes,
situation too,
yeah, absolutely.
and a lot of it also has to do with the medicine itself, with the brew of the medicine, right? There's Everybody thinks a lot of people new to medicine will think like ayahuasca is just ayahuasca, right? No, there's many different components that can be added into the brew along with the ayahuasca vine, and this changes things a lot. So for example, daime medicine, medicine that I've experienced from like Hunikuin, very light. Rainbow medicine, a whole different kind of medicine than Peruvian medicine,
Yeah,
right? Which can be like
or Colombian.
underworld and dark and like crazy town, you know?
Absolutely.
And so there's so many variables that come into play when we're talking about if whether or not size matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk to mostly people from the West who are not familiar with these plants and with this culture, and this way of thinking. So obviously it's a totally different question when, indigenous people have their ceremonies and they grew up, with the medicine and in that culture. And that's not our focus, of conversation. What we are here for is trying to bridge the gap, between the huge amount of people from the West who are coming to the medicine without any previous knowledge, experience, cultural heritage, so on and so forth. So, just to clarify this, as you said, that those are the people who we are talking to here primary, and I assume, that these are the people who are our listeners mostly. I don't think that the shippybos need to listen to my podcast, and it's certainly, not for them. So one of the things, that you can do if you are going into these places or retreats or something, like if you can go with a friend who you really trust, to have like an outside kind of checkpoint for you. So if you're feeling something, if you're experiencing something, you can bounce it off, with a person who you personally trust. Or even if you cannot bring a person with you, call a person or talk to somebody, who you trust personally, that say, hey, I have these feelings, or this is what happened during the retreat. I'm not sure. What do you think? To have an outside perspective from a trusted person. I think that one thing I would say is to speak up. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, speak up, speak to somebody, speak to a facilitator, speak to a helper, speak to another participant, speak to a trusted friend of yours, to get, like other information, because sometimes, people dismiss themselves and say, I'm being silly, or I'm being over worried, or whatever, or this is not real, especially if there is gaslighting involved, and people can really, question, their intuition, their gut feeling. So just speak out, speak up. If you are not sure, talk to people, talk to facilitators, talk to other people, other participants, your trusted friends. I had, like not in a medicine space, but, I had this experience with a very close friend of mine who had a surgery in an allopathic hospital, close to where I live. And the surgeon, who performed her surgery hit on her. And anyway, she ended up in a sexual relationship with the surgeon while she was healing, from the surgery. And eventually, when she told me about it, because she was so disturbed, and I was like, what's going on with you? And she told me about it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so not cool. This is so not okay. This
A violation of
this
ethical code.
person, like how, I mean, I was like, for me, it was like, wow. And my reaction, kind of shocked her back into reality. And in her mind, somehow she was told things. And, like when we are in that vulnerable place of healing, we are so, kind of open to manipulation, and that is the truth. So speaking to somebody can be, like a huge resource. Somebody telling you that, hey, this is not cool, what is happening, then suddenly, putting it into perspective for you. And then she did stop, that relationship, and she did make action to report this person, because of my input, because she talked to me. And maybe if she would have never told anybody, there could have been more damage, and not just to her, but to other people. Because I'm sure that, most of people who are abusing, their power, they don't do it only once and then they never do it again. But it's something, unfortunately, that occurs, on a regular basis. So we also have to think about that. Hey, I also don't want other people to fall prey, to the same thing. So so from this perspective, it is our duty and responsibility to speak out and to voice our concerns and to disclose, you know, what happened to us. So more transparency and more light can be brought in. And, you know, just making a very side note, unfortunately, there is misuse of this one as well. You know, I heard some participants, you know, stating not true things about, you know, healers and spaces because they didn't have their expectations meet whatever they was. So again, you know, like there is so many angles and so many perspectives, and there's always exceptions from each rule. But just in general, I think, you know, speaking out is like super important, to protect ourselves and to create more awareness, you know, in these areas. And I just wanted to connect to, you know, just to wrap it up and just see what else, you know, moving in us to share today, that what you said, you know, and we were talking a little bit about black magic and how, you know, people who intentionally misuse their power, you know, and manipulate other people for sexual gain, financial gain, or just, you know, for status. These people, when they work with powerful plant medicines like the ayahuasca, for example, because of their integrity and their vibration, their frequency of their vibration, when they open a healing space or set up a space, you know, they can open a space into another good space. You know, I don't know how else to say. So, you know, somebody who is not in integrity and alignment with higher frequency, with like truth and compassion and integrity and highest form of love, you know, that we can aspire to, then if you open a space, you're going to connect to the lower astral. For example, you know, you will connect to spaces where it's more density, is more darkness,
Absolutely.
you know. And so, you know, if somebody is a participant sits in these places, you can be attacked, you know, you can pick up energies, you know, you can pick up even entities, you know, that you you know, that will
And
not
that's a very real thing, and it happens all the time.
yeah, that will not serve your highest good, that will not serve your healing. So that's another aspect that I wanted to just bring in, you know, from the spiritual perspective, that it does matter hugely who you sit with and what kind of space you sit with, and where do these people come from, and what is their intention, and what is their frequency, because, you know, you are opening portals into other realities, into other dimensions, and that can be very different where you travel to, you know, and that can be very traumatic or very healing, depending the person who is opening that portal and where is that portal connecting to. So yeah, do you want to add to this a
Well,
little?
you said everything that I wanted to say, because I was going to loop back around when I was talking about the size of ceremonies and how this can be so dangerous. And that's one of the reasons why, right? If money is the motivator and there's no consideration of safety or optimizing the experience for others, and let's just pack them in, or like you said, that there's these people that just are already in this lower vibration. There's so many ways that we can go into a ceremony and end up more traumatized and pick up what we call like dark energies or dark entities. And so again, like, case in point, why it's so important for someone who is serving medicine to be in integrity, and it can't be about money. That's what I always say, and that's my contract with medicine, right? It's not about, it's not, I don't serve medicine as in I pour medicine, or I, you know, it I it's I serve the medicine, right? I We have to bow down to the medicine and to become that hollow vessel for the medicine, and to say, how can I serve you, right? How can I serve you? Because the medicines are here to serve in the way of healing, right? In the way of healing the human population. Uh, and so it's never about me and how, you know, what I'm serving, right? It's how I am serving and how I walk that path with the chosen medicines that I do humbly bow down and serve, and allow them to always be my teachers and to be that voice, right? One other thing I wanted to bring up is the exploitation now of the medicines. And we're talking about the ayahuasca vine, we're talking about iboga, we're talking about kambo and bufo, and a lot of the medicines that are becoming very popular these days. There's a lot of money to be made. And I've actually been told that being a shaman in Peru is one of the best ways to make money. It's like one of the top five ways to make money.
Surprised,
Right?
especially
It's a
last
business.
five,
Yeah.
10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's a business, and or it might be, it can be. And not saying that because I know some really, really amazing, you know,
Absolutely.
indigenous shamans who are in complete integrity and doing such beautiful work. But we do see a lot of now people selling these medicines on the internet, people buying medicines on the internet to do their own home ceremonies, to uh, set up their own thing where they're serving other people and things like this. Uh, Anytime that that medicine is being harvested in this way, where it's for greed, it's going to carry a very dark energy, and it's not going to be for the greatest purpose and highest good for anyone. I want to just say it's so important to uh, ask our providers, how are you giving back? How are you giving back? When you make an ayahuasca brew or you receive it from somewhere, are they replanting the vine? Do you perhaps give to an organization or support an organization in some way that is looking to preserve the land, maybe the Amazon, right? Or looking to protect the misuse and abuse of the frog and the toad, uh, because these medicines and the plants and the animals from which they come are being abused quite a bit now because they've become popular and there's money to be made. And so just like tobacco, which was such a beautiful healing medicine, it became a cash crop. And then now we see the shadow side of the abuse of this beautiful medicine, cancer and lung disease, and all kinds of, and the filters that never degrade, when and they poison the earth, right? And the pesticides, and so the same things happen with these other sacred medicines. And so very, very important that we are always asking that question: where did the medicine come from? Is it ethical? Is the use of it ethical? And how are you giving back?
Absolutely. I so with you, sister. And, I really do encourage people to go to the source, to work with medicines. I think that is the safest. When I was in Peru, we were part of harvesting. We went with the plant master and the shaman and asked permission, from the land, asked permission from the plant, to take that wine, to take that leaf. And then it was cooked, with prayer, with the participation and putting all the prayer and or intentions, into the medicine. And then it was served, in a beautiful way that will be a totally different energy, frequency, and experience compared to somebody going out harvesting it for money, for selling it on the internet, cooking it up in their kitchen, then shipping it to Australia or something. You kind of compare these two experiences, and that also I think people not aware of. And then of course some people maybe cannot travel or go to the source, and there is many people who serve with integrity, that the people that I work with, they personally go back to their teachers each year, to Peru or to Colombia or to wherever they were trained, and go back for continuous development, to sit with medicine for themselves and also to take medicine from their teachers, and they are personally bringing it back and serving it, with the permission, of the elders of the tribe. And then, they are giving back either financially or in some other way, to support that land and that community where the medicine is coming from. So absolutely agree that that is a good question. Where is the medicine coming from? How was it harvested? How was it prepared? And how do you give back? How do you honor that? And as we talked before, this over harvesting of the medicines and these sacred animals, who carry medicines is very unnecessary. It can be an addiction. People say, oh, you cannot be addicted to ayahuasca because you throw up, and it's an intense journey and stuff. I think you absolutely can be addicted to ayahuasca. You can be addicted to that experience, to that high, to that ayahuasca afterglow. And I know several people who, when that wears off, they just go to another ceremony instead of going deeper into themselves and uprooting those things that the medicine brought up for them to see. And they proudly say, oh, I have to sit with the medicine every 4 months, otherwise I would go crazy or something. I literally hear people say things like that. And it's like, from my perspective, that's not a good advertisement for you, on the contrary. So yeah, we don't need a lot of medicine. I think that the medicines are there for us to find our own power within ourselves, to help us, to guide us back to our own power, our own divinity, our own beauty, and to find that anchor within us. So we're not going to need medicine on a regular basis, because then it can be the same pattern as we have with pharmaceuticals, that you are relying on things. Now, in this case, not a pill, in this case is a plant, but the dynamic, the energetic patterning is pretty similar. And that's not what is our intention and what is our goal, but our goal is to come back to ourselves, and to recognize our own power, and not to rely on anything external, may that be a medicine plant. So when somebody is saying, I need the medicine to be functional and to keep my sanity, that is a red flag also for me.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. When we hear this all the time, when is the next ceremony? Like, I'm going crazy. And I need it, I need it, I need it. And so we just have to be, again, we have to be really discerning. We have to ask ourselves in that moment, well, what are we doing outside of ceremony? Right? Why is it that we keep needing it so much? What's going on? Are we really doing the integration? Are we really gathering the tools? Are we really doing the shadow work? Are we really taking everything that we were shown in that ceremony and applying it? Are we doing the work that was presented to us? Or are we just going to ceremony and then we have our afterglow and then we get back into normal life and then we don't think about it for a while and then we come back? Now, certainly also there's people where this is their community, right? And just like that village, I think that that's also possible in the Western world, right? Like where we have these communities where we come. I have a community like that where we know like there's going to be a couple times a year where it's available for us to come, to be together, to sit together. And it's a really beautiful experience that transcends some sort of like, I need to be here, even though sometimes people really do come there like, I need to be here, I need to be here with my family, I need to be here. And so, not to shame or judge ourselves or another for for continuing to be in need of medicine. but simply to ask ourselves, if we hear ourselves saying something like that, well, what else am I doing about this, right? And then using the discernment that we need to bring to all of these situations. A lot of times, what I think is a very healthy way is people go to a ceremony or series of ceremonies. They do their work, they integrate, and then I hear them say something like, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for another ceremony. I think I'm ready to go deeper.
Right.
And that is, I think, a very healthy approach, versus like grasping and hoping for this like magic pill, and I just need it, I got to feel better again, right? But we also just might need it as a tool. Ceremony can be a tool, and we might need it to go into that place, to have that sacred space
Yeah.
where we have that conversation with the medicine, and we receive the downloads, and we receive the messages of, how do we go from here? What do I need to do? Right? But then we have to take those messages, and we actually have to do it, and we have to follow through. So there's a shadow side to needing it, and then I think there's a light side as well.
Absolutely, depending, on the motivation and the frequency. And of course, as we said, there is exemptions from each rule, but I know about churches in the United States who do ceremonies every 2 weeks, and encourage people to come like every 2 weeks with the ayahuasca. Like, again, this can be exceptions from this rule, but I think that's very short amount of time between ceremonies to really drop in and integrate and process, what you've been going through. And to do this, for months. I've seen many people who ended up in a serious breakdown because they were just kept digging and digging and more, going deeper and deeper without doing, the necessary work to integrate that information, and that, that was coming to the surface, and then it caused the breakdown. So again, it can be exceptions, but generally speaking, to work with a master teacher plant with that frequency, you have to get some really good reasons. I mean, if you're training to be a shaman, and to somebody who served maybe, and it can take years. I know that the Shipibo shaman that I sat with, at the beginning, he told us that he was in the jungle on his own with the medicine for 4 years.
Yes.
And
I mean,
that
there's,
was,
the Shipibo, of course, we know they go deep, right? And it isn't
yeah, that
a
was,
doctor.
I was like, it's
All of the
not that,
master
he
plant
did a
dietas.
couple of ceremonies, that he was really communing with the
Yes.
plant. So
There's a matter of how many master plant dietas that they do, right? There are certain plants that they must diet in order to serve. And generally, yeah, it's around like a 10-year process, and sometimes even more. And I've talked to some of my various teachers about this, and they say, it doesn't have to be that way.
I,
There are other paths, and I've known people who are on other paths that hold really safe, really beautiful ceremonies. But I would also say, like one thing my teacher always said to me is, you can't take someone where you haven't been yourself, which means if you're going to take someone really, really deep, it means you have to be really, really deep with that medicine. And you have to have an extraordinary relationship with that medicine, right? If you are going to be able to take someone to those really, really, really deep levels.
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for all of these reminders, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, sister. We're gonna wrap it up for today. I hope that our listeners get a lot out of, these episodes, and you're welcome to contact, Bonnie or myself if you have any further question. And we are preparing, to create this organization for people who work with intelligence. standing for integrity and ethics. And actually we are writing, this code of ethics and standards of practice. And, Bonnie is one of the, the person who is actively participating in that. And we have a couple of other people who work in this area. But if you're listening to this podcast and you are a space holder, or you have, retreats and you resonate with what we are talking about, please reach out to us. And, if you want to be part of this initiative, because I think it's so important that we keep talking about it, and we create spaces, where, those safe places, where people can gather. But I think what I would love to close with is that intention is a very powerful thing. And we were talking about the intentions of the people who are serving or leading or guiding people, in these experiences and these type of healing journeys. But the intention of the participant is also a super powerful tool. So I would say, if you are somebody who is embarking on this journey or on this journey already, set a very clear intention of why you are in this path. What is the healing that you would like to experience, and put that intention that you want to connect with people, places, with integrity, with the highest form of ethics and integrity and authenticity and transparency. So if you as a participant has a very clear intention that these are the people who are calling in, these are the frequency, these are the values that I'm calling in, these are the places that I'm calling in, it's very, very likely that whoever you attract, people, places, and opportunities will be in alignment with your intention. So if you are not clear, or if you don't have any intention, or you're just like, let's go with the flow and see how I end up, there is a bigger chance that you are opening yourself to all kinds of energies, to come in. So I would say that really, for your own protection, you can specify that this is, the frequency I want to align with. These are the principles that I want to align with. These are the people who I'm aligning myself with. And that's what I want to draw towards myself. So you as a participant have a lot of power. So recognize that power, use your intention, be clear, and precise as much as possible why you are doing this and what you want to get out of it, and what kind of people you want to work with, and what kind of places you want to be part of. And, just remember that we have a tremendous amount of power as well to say no, to speak our truth, to voice our concerns. And it's very important that we do so, because this is how we evolve and grow together and learn, from our mistakes. So that's why we are, standing for this type of more like education rather than punishment, because it is a learning experience, and I did commit mistakes, in my therapeutic relationships in the past, and maybe I will in the future as well, and it's okay, I'm not perfect, but, I trust that I learned from those experiences, and that's what matters, I think, in these places. So anything else you want to add to close, sister?
I just want to extend my gratitude to you, Nina. Thanks so much for holding the space for us to talk about these important issues. And just to say to everyone out there, yeah, always put your own safety first, follow your intuition, and know that you have resources available to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we're going to come back, obviously, and Bonnie will be back here as well on the podcast. So thank you for listening. We're going to post Bonnie's website, but is it bonniedivinamaa.com?
It's
What is your
it's awakenascend.com.
awakenascend.com? Yes, exactly. So we're going to post your availability. And do you have anything that you would like to share, a program or a course or anything that you are running, or you have any openings for clients?
I have plenty of openings Yeah, I would say that's really the main thing that I'm doing right now. I'm available for really profound Zoom sessions as well as in-person sessions if you're somewhere near Houston or somewhere in the world where I may be, which changes quite a bit. Yeah, so I welcome you into the space. Integration is one of the main things that Nina and I both do. And it's our passion, and it's a privilege to be able to work in that arena.
Absolutely. And I think you are coming soon back to Mexico to do a
I
retreat
am.
with, will it be with Cambo or Bufo or both?
It's with mainly with Bufo.
Okay. Do you have
Yeah.
still spaces available for that,
It's
or that
full.
it's full? Okay. Well,
Full.
the next one,
But there'll be next
we're gonna
ones. There'll be other
advertise
ones.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, also check out my website for the upcoming training if you wanna, if you feel a deep calling to support people in their preparation and integration journey as a facilitator. So this is specific to the medicine ayahuasca. This is not a training to serve the medicine. This is a training to help people to prepare and then to do the integration and deep trauma healing, to create a supportive container for people, to really, take their power back over their lives. And with the use, where we use this medicine as a catalyst. If you're interested in that, just go to avatarhealingarts.com/training and you find more information about the training over there. And also you can reach out to me for integration, or if you're interested in the training. And there is a lot of things that we are cooking up and brewing, and we are, expanding this community. So I'm excited, to have more practitioners come on board with, so we can create, community that is based on the same values, what we are talking about and we are holding here, instead of, fighting against things and people that, we are not in alignment. I think, our focus is really to create these safe places where there is transparency, where there is authenticity and integrity. And I think that is something that's sorely missing, not just from these medicine places, but in life in general, and integrity was replaced and ethics were replaced with money, unfortunately, in our culture. So we are wanting to go back and, put money in the important things, but not above everything else. So thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Please follow our podcast and share it with your friends and relatives and clients and sisters and brothers, because we need you. We need your help, to put this information more out there. And just sending lots of love from my heart to your heart. And remember that you are the healer and love is the medicine. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of love.